DB show. I'm Dan Kornhauser with my co-host tonight, Bobby Hunt. Bob, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, Dan. You ready to talk some sports? Do a lot of NFL?
Always fucking ready, boy. So let's jump right into it. This is a very special episode. This is going to be our NFL episode. We're going to talk about all the things that happened in the offseason, 1 hour. We're not going to touch on every individual team. We're not going to touch on every individual move, but we're going to try to break it down, have some fun, and go over it. I hope you guys are ready because I'm ready. Let's do it. First things first, Bob. Training camp is here. Rookies are starting to report. I know the Jets are reporting to camps soon. It's happening. All right. What is the Hall of Fame game is just a week or two away, if that. I mean, it's time. All right. It's time. Football's back. So with that in mind, with training camp comes some special things, particularly in the media. So, for example, this quarterback show that came out on Netflix, very popular, seems to be a success, so much so that they've already said they're going to do a second season. And Hard Knocks is coming back. I know we touched on Hard Knocks, I think, last week or something like that, but Hard Knocks is coming back. Last year was the Detroit Lions. I made it clear that I did not watch, and I really couldn't care less. But it is something that you're interested in. And it's going to be the Jets. They didn't have a choice. They're disgusted. Rodgers is disgusted. Their fans are disgusted. Well, actually, I think their fans are more excited than anything. But regardless, the organization's repulsed. But here we are. So let's dive into that. Are you excited for the Jets being on Hard Knocks? Are you excited training camp is starting?
Now, first, I do have a question for you. Are you going to watch either of these, either Hard Knocks with the Jets or quarterbacks on Netflix?
The quarterbacks one, it is kind of interesting, so maybe I'll watch that. But I have absolutely no interest in Hard Knocks at all, especially because the Jets pretty much flat out came out and said that, I mean, we know the teams are in complete control of the content that does go out during Hard Knocks, but they flat out said like they're not interested in almost anything that went on in last year's Hard Knocks. They have no interest in now. So there's not going to be any fun coaching things. There's not going to be any crazy insight into meetings, seemingly, or I don't know what they're going to do with this. So I don't even know if it's going to be interesting. But
fair enough. And the quarterback's idea is more interesting too because it's a fresh one. It's a new series. It's the first one that's been released. They were filming it over this past season. It highlights Marcus Mariota, Kirk Cousins, and Patrick Mahomes. So 3 very different levels of quarterbacks in the NFL. I do look forward to Hard Knocks, though, mainly because it's the Jets, and they are a sexy team. Of the options that it was potentially going to be, Commanders, Saints, Bears, or Jets, clearly it had to be the Jets. You get the big fish. You get a 4-time MVP, Aaron Rodgers, in the offseason. They have a 2 or 3 year window with him to try to win a Super Bowl. They have a good young roster, offensive and defensive rookie of the year, so that'll be entertaining at least. But if they're not given the same access, no, I'm not as excited as maybe other seasons, or especially when it was in its infancy, this show. And it is very formulaic. That's also why I would recommend quarterbacks more. I still haven't watched it yet, but if you're just asking me based on what I know about Hard Knocks, there's not going to be anything groundbreaking. And then you add this on top of it, it's really not going to be as appealing as previous seasons.
Okay, so you're gonna watch it because it's the Jets. They're sexy,
but
it's fun. It sounds kind of.
But if you're asking me between the two, I would recommend quarterbacks. People are more interested in probably the daily lives of these people and see how you relate to them than just seeing Hard Knocks where they're at training camp and it's more focused on football. Of course, they highlight some personal stories with a few different players. But it's always pretty much a random assortment. Yes, they get maybe one star guy, but it doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers is very interested in it. So are we really going to get a lot from him during the show? Hopefully we get a little something. Yeah, I don't expect a lot. And we know it's only a 5-episode series. There's not going to be a ton there. But I hope they at least get to do something with Rodgers because he's the real sex appeal. Of course, Sauce Gardner, nice personality. Quinnen Williams, I think people will see that he has quite a personality as well. He just got paid last week, and we're discussing that. Garrett Wilson, I'm sure young, exciting player has something to show on this program, but unfortunately, that's what kind of mars it. I'd be really excited without them coming out and saying this, but the fact that they're so disinterested in having it and that they want to pull back some of the access, that's disappointing, to be honest.
Well, that's why I brought it up. That's why I brought it up, because you're actually someone who watches.
Obviously, if you're a Jets fan, you want to watch it because it's your team. Even though I'm a Giants fan, I live in this area. We live in New York. I am curious. I know these players. I hear about the other teams in town after my teams the most for obvious reasons. We have at least 2 teams for every major sport here in New York. So I'm interested, but I can get why someone else wouldn't be. And especially when you find out this news, that's even more reason not to catch it. And Netflix, you can binge it. If you get into it, if you don't like it, you just stop. I mean, you could do the same, obviously, with Hard Knocks, but if you wind up liking it, you can just binge right through.
Okay, fair points. Now let's move on from Hard Knocks and the media side of things, and let's talk actual football, okay? Because I know it's the off season, but there's been some stuff that's gone on in the last week since the last show or last few days. So let's jump right into it. All right, let's start with DeAndre Hopkins. He finally signs with an NFL team. He goes to the Tennessee Titans on a 2-year deal. For me, it looked like a bargain. What was it? 2 years, 24 mil or something like that, 25 mil, some shit like that. And I mean, for a former All-Pro, a guy who just a couple of years ago was considered by some to be maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL, for him to fall down this far to the point where people are questioning if he's in Michael Thomas category of being washed, as he is 29, 30 years old, coming off of injury, and so on and so forth. A couple of not quite right years that we'd expected from him. He signs with the Titans, gets a cheap deal. How do we feel about that signing, both for the Titans and for Hopkins?
If I were going to grade it, I'd say maybe a B. I think the contract is very fair, especially for the Titans. It's not a big commitment. I think the official details, if I'm remembering them correctly, was 2 years, $26 million. And then he has incentives that could get it to a total of $32 million. Okay. And I forget the exact guarantees, but he could meet those incentives. I said them in our chat, I believe, saying if he hits 95 catches, he gets $1 million. If he gets 1,050 yards, he gets $1 million bonus. And I believe 10 touchdowns in a season. So that's good for this year and next year that he could potentially hit. Highly doubt he's hitting many of those numbers, especially the touchdowns and catches, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to throw the ball enough, and especially we don't think much of Tannehill. Will Levis is going to be a raw rookie, and Malik Willis probably won't even wind up making the team. Therefore, I think the Titans, he's going to have difficulty reaching that. Overall, I like the move because the contract's not bad, and they do need another option. You can't just rely on Treylon Burks, rookie last year out of Arkansas, to step up and be a number one option. I liked some of the flashes last year, but he also got hurt, missed some games. Can't rely on him as a number one. I like him as a 2 or 3, and give at least Tannehill a legitimate option. It's just a matter of if DeAndre can stay on the field. Can he play 17 games? If not 17, is he only going to miss a few? If he's on the field, I expect production. I don't think he's washed up yet, but I'm also not excited about this move, just knowing their offense and their quarterback issues.
Now, how am I going to say this? I want to do episodes and shows where we do our top 10s. Top 10 quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, edge rushers, corners, all of it. I want to do top 10s. We're not going to do any top 10s today, but you say you don't think D-Hop is washed. I don't think he's washed either. I still think he has some good football left in him. But I'm also slow to get off the bandwagon of players that I like. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask on this. But regardless, I agree with you. I don't think he's washed. So where do you think D-Hop is going to rank this season in the wide receiver hierarchy? Because he's no longer a top 5 option at this point, not for me anyway. And when I look at like a list of the top 10 receivers, like I saw a list of the top 10 receivers that NFL executives, coaches, and personnel like voted on or whatever. And I mean, there were some pretty obvious names, guys like, Adams and Chase and Diggs and Jefferson and so on and so forth. But then towards like the bottom, I saw AJ Brown, Scary Terry, Metcalf. There's a good amount of wide receivers in the league now that can be in the conversation for that top 10. CeeDee Lamb. So there's some names. Where's D-Hop falling on your ranking going into the season?
Going into the season, it's tough to rank him just because of the injuries, and he's on a new team, a team that runs the ball so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be hard for him to really give elite production. And I also don't think he is what he used to be. Granted, we're both agreeing that he's not washed, but I also don't expect prime DeAndre Hopkins, even when he is healthy. Okay. But he can still be capable of a big game. He's still a very good route runner. His best attribute is that he has amazing hands. He rarely drops the ball. That's a big bonus for that offense and Ryan Tannehill. If Tannehill has anything left, I think Hopkins made a good choice, and that's also why I graded it a B, because I'm figuring he's going to get a chance for a lot of balls thrown his way, basically. He's not competing with a lot of high-end talent or young players that are going to steal his spot. If he's available for the games, he's going to be the number one option. We just haven't seen a receiver really produce much in that offense, aside from maybe A.J. Brown, his first 2 seasons with the Titans. He had a couple good years there before they traded him last offseason. They don't really have many mouths to feed, and so that buoys his production.
Mm-hmm.
Just that fit. Can I trust him? I'm going in that 15 to 20 range.
Interesting. Okay.
I really don't think top 10 at all. And I just don't think there will be enough production there.
Okay. I would probably put him in that. I'd probably put him in that 15 range as well, because just like you said, there's certain guys that if they're healthy, you expect them to put up certain stats. Like no one's going to say, oh, Jefferson is going to play 17 games and have, 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. Like you're expecting 14, 15, 1,600 and 12 touchdowns from a guy like that. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, there's certain guys you expect certain things from, and he is in a questionable situation, like you said, for multiple reasons, aside from the quarterback, aside from the offense, aside from all these other things.
They don't have a good offensive line either.
It's the offensive line.
Eric goes down. What threat do they have? D-Hop be able to get the ball because the quarterback's going to be getting killed.
Yep. I mean, these are all things to consider. But yeah, I'd probably put him in a similar range as well, somewhere in that range with a guy like a Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle type range, if that makes sense.
Lower than that to me,
but you get what I'm saying.
I agree.
All right, so let's move on. Let's stick with off-season stuff, of course. Who got paid, new teams, whatever. Evan Ingram just got paid. Friday night, and he got a 3-year deal, got a fat contract, shocked the hell out of me. As a Giants fan, this is your former tight end. He had a good year for Jacksonville. Bittersweet for you, considering that he was a complete waste while he was there and loved dropping easy passes and loved dropping touchdowns?
I don't have a problem with him. He's on a new team now. Good for him. He had success. It's not like he's on a rival or anything like that. I know there's some Giants fans that'll harbor resentment toward a former player like that, but I really don't. And it's not like he's a bad guy or anything. That would definitely be grounds to boo him. Or if he was a really bigger piece, I would understand booing him. But he acted professionally. He did drop too many passes. We booed him when those happened over the last couple of years. He had to go. Good for him. He's had a fresh new start. But hey, I'm happy with Giants having Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger backing him up, and so on and so forth.
Okay. All right. So no harm, no foul. Fair enough. Now, let's go to the running backs because this is the big one. Okay, we're 15 minutes in and we're just starting to talk about the running backs. So the big three, Jacobs, Barkley, didn't get paid. It happens. Hashtag running back problems. Apparently, they're all disgusted. And I mean, I get it. The position has been devalued financially, and I guess part of it we could blame Todd Gurley for, and even Ezekiel Elliott to a degree. But guys like Pollard, Barkley, etc. Shit, even Eckler. Even Eckler's bitching about it because he's another one who wanted another contract or to get traded. And not only did he not get that new contract, he ain't getting traded. Joe Mixon just accepted a very team-friendly deal to stay with the Bengals beyond this season. There's a pattern evolving here. And it's weird considering because we just saw a running back go 8th overall and another running back go 12th overall. And I mean, for a position that's so devalued and so unimportant compared to quarterback, corner, left tackle, hell, receiver, just about, any position outside of like guard, pretty much. Do they have a point? Should they be upset that the running back position's been devalued? Or is there something to it? Because, I mean, if you want to look back at the Super Bowl winners, Super Bowl teams, not even just the winners, even the losers. How many of those had an elite running back, had a top 5 running back, a top 10 running back? Hell, Patrick Mahomes just won a Super Bowl with you and me at running back.
It's one of those interesting cases where both things can be right. It can be right that
I don't want to hear that.
The running back can be upset because they're not getting paid what they're worth.
Boo.
And I'll start with that first. They don't feel like they're getting paid what they're worth because a lot of them do touch the ball a ton, more than any other player on the offense besides the quarterback. They're constantly either rushing it or receiving it, especially in the case of Saquon Barkley. I'm sure Tony Pollard this upcoming season is going to handle a lot with Zeke Elliott going.
Bob, if touching balls was a barometer for getting paid, you would be a millionaire.
Oh, good one. What a bitch. I hate you. Look at you, smug prick. Anyway.
Yes, you were saying.
Jerk. Anyway, with the running backs, they're not getting paid. So I understand why they're upset. They're not getting Christian McCaffrey was getting 15 or 16 mil a year in that range. They're getting lowballed for the most part. But the other part can be true where, yes, their position isn't as valuable. And the real reason is because not that they're not good. And the other thing I wanted to mention is they are responsible for fantasy football being loved so much because they're one of the most valuable positions there. They also sell jerseys a lot, so they are stars. They are well known to people because of fantasy and just the game itself anyway, because they're the ones scoring touchdowns, running and receiving, doing everything out there. So they are important to the NFL. They really are, beyond just on the field. Off the field, they are as well. They're the face of the league in a lot of cases, besides some of the biggest quarterbacks. Not all of them, obviously, but a few select guys, and especially like Adrian Peterson was years ago, as an example.
Right.
But it can be true. It's an unfortunate situation, but we expected it. We expected these guys to not get long-term deals. You look at we were talking about Evan Ingram just before. He was one of the players that got franchise tagged.
Yeah.
The Commanders also got franchise tagged. Lamar Jackson got franchise tagged.
They got paid.
Lamar to get paid at some point, whether it was by the Ravens or someone else, but it became apparent there was no suitor for him in a trade. They re-signed him to 5 years, $260 million with, $190 guaranteed or so. They lock him up. Payne gets locked up. And now Ingram, all the other positions got paid. The 3 running backs that got franchise tagged didn't get long-term deals. Tony Pollard of the Cowboys, Josh Jacobs of the Raiders, and obviously Saquon with the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
It's been totally devalued. You can replace their production more easily. Yes, they're not going to be as high-end as you, but they can probably do 70% of what Saquon Barkley could do, whereas there's a bigger drop-off at all the other positions. We don't even need to talk about quarterback or pass rusher, but even a position like wide receiver. there is a big difference between a number 1 and number 2 wide receiver. These guys are game-breaking, true, unbelievable playmakers. That's why they get paid big money. There's a big difference on most teams between the 1 and 2. There's rare exceptions like the Bengals or the Dolphins. You have 2 really good wide receivers.
Yep.
That's why they get paid the premium price. I don't see the running back position market changing at all anytime soon. And we also see free agents that remain out there, like Leonard Fournette.
That's right.
Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt. These guys aren't getting signs. Ezekiel Elliott. There's no good market for these running backs. I don't expect it to change anytime soon.
Now, sticking with this running back scenario, this is something that has been bounced around, and it's something that I myself have been thinking about a little bit, and it's this. The NFL makes buku money, not only every season, but every single week. Hell, even in the preseason. They sign lucrative TV contracts. They sign lucrative advertisement deals with different multi-billion-dollar corporations. Everyone wants a piece of the NFL pie. But the NFL is the only hard salary cap league that we have, sports league that we have in this country. Basketball has a salary cap, but it's a soft cap. And it's got penalties, stiffer penalties now for surpassing certain thresholds, but it's a soft cap. You can still do essentially whatever you want if you're willing to pay. Baseball, there is no cap. You pay to play, and that's it. Hockey has a salary cap, but I believe that also might be a soft cap. I can't recall off the top of my head.
Actually, it's a hard cap.
It is, okay.
There's a weird loophole where if a guy spends the whole season on long-term IR, you don't have to pay his. I think you do have to pay his salary, but it doesn't count on your cap. And then that's why teams in the last couple of years, I know the Lightning did 2 years ago, and I believe even this year the Vegas Knights had someone on the IR, and they were able to stash them basically and not pay towards the cap during the season because they were hurt all year. But then they came back for the playoffs, and these are 2 great players that came back and clearly made a difference. So that's one of the loopholes there, but they do have a hard cap. So NFL, NHL, hard caps, NBA, soft cap, very soft cap, because if you have the money, you can damn near do whatever you want. I think there is a hard cap at some point, but it's pretty high up there.
Right. So, all right. So the reason I bring that up is because the NFL has a salary cap, a hard cap that you cannot surpass under any circumstance. You have to be below it. Even if you're $1 below the cap, you have to be under the cap, period. But even though the salary cap seems like it's going to keep rising every year, it doesn't really go up that much. Yet player salaries feel like they're going through the roof on a yearly basis. Every single quarterback deal resets the market. Most of these wide receiver deals kind of reset their market. All these free agent contracts reset their markets, and it's getting crazy to the point where quarterbacks are going to be getting $40, $50 million a year. I mean, hell, even an average quarterback like Dan Jones got a $40+ million contract.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was getting in there.
Listen, that's been a stick in my craw all offseason because it's disgusting. I don't care. I don't care what the issue at wide receiver was. If it was you, me, and my cat at wide receiver, I don't care. As a professional quarterback, he is wildly mediocre. The fact that they had to tailor the offense to not have him make mistakes should be a telltale sign this guy fucking sucks. But aside from his pathetic statistical season and the fact that a professional NFL quarterback in 2023 is getting applauded for throwing 15 touchdown passes like this is fucking 1970, should tell you that you probably shouldn't be paying this guy $40 million a year. But I digress. The quarterback contract.
I was waiting for you to digress. You totally went off on a rant there. And I'm not even going to dignify it with a response.
I have my moments. Just leave it alone. Moving on. The quarterbacks aside, everyone's getting paid. Wide receivers are getting $20, $25 million a year. They're going to be going up. Offensive tackles are getting 25 mil a year, and that's going to be going up. Edge rushers, corners. There's only so much money to go around when your salary cap's, 200 million or whatever the hell it is. So my question to you is either A, is the NFL going to get to the point where they say these contracts are getting out of control and they put a cap on them like they do in the NBA, or is it going to get to the point where the NFL decides, you know what, instead of raising the salary cap by a few mil, why don't we raise it by like 20 mil this offseason and really give everyone a chance? Because it's one of those both sides are right argument, because you're going to have people that say the players should get paid whatever they can make, as much as they can make every time they have an opportunity. And then you're going to have the people who say, well, the teams have to be fiscally responsible. Where do you fall on that argument? Because for me, as much as I want players to get paid, and they should get paid, their careers are not that long. We're not talking about 30-year careers, 40-year careers in most fields. We're talking about, the best of the best having 10, 12 years in the NFL. Less. The average is just a couple of seasons. So while I feel like players should be getting paid whatever they want to get paid, as much as they can, as often as they can, they should be all about that bread. The current system doesn't make sense, because everyone will agree that you need a good quarterback, an elite quarterback, to be where you want to be and win chips. But when you're paying your quarterback 50, 60 mil, it's going to happen. Joe Burrow, Herbert, all these young goats that are up next to get paid, it's going to get crazy. There's no reason why Joe Burrow should be paid anything less than 50 mil a year. None. 55 mil a year. He should be the highest paid quarterback with the new market being set. But where do you stand on this?
That was a long way.
I know.
You explained your stance. Now, to simply answer your question, no, I don't think there's going to be any end to it. Why would the owner stop it? They're making so much money. The cap went up recently when the new TV deal kicked in, went up by about 25 million. Typically, there was raises about 10 to 12 million per year usually. So not a lot there. But I think the cap is going up enough, and the TV deal is so crazy. The endorsement deals, they have tons of them, as you see advertising everywhere with beer companies, soda companies, you name it, telecommunication companies, all those fucking places. And they're just making tons of money. They are a behemoth. And you also look at all the rights deals that they got with all different corporate sponsors. It's just, they're making too much money. They're not going to change anything. And the difference, too, with the NBA, for example, is these guys actually play. I will pay Patrick Mahomes $50, $60 million a year, or Joe Burrow, or Josh Allen, because they're going to be trying to play every game. Now, yes, injuries happen. We know that. And that's the nature of this game or any other sport, but especially in football. But at least they play every day, every game they can. In basketball, that doesn't happen, and those salaries have gotten insane. That's where I understand the argument of something needs to change. NFL, I don't see why. These guys make just gobs of money. Every year, the highest-rated programs on TV are NFL games, whether on CBS, Fox, or one of the other over-the-air networks, because it's not happening on ESPN. But even ESPN gets crazy ratings. Yeah. That's why ESPN is able to get someone like Pat McAfee, because he's talking football most of the time and talks to popular athletes in the NFL. That's why he might wind up being worth what they're paying, and why they slashed 20 other employees, especially ones that have been there for so long. I don't think anything's going to change with the NFL, and in a way, I don't blame them. They're just making so much money. Stadiums are packed.
Well, that's my point.
Like all-time high. NFL is just sailing along. They're
fine. Yeah, but that's my point. They're making so much money in so many different avenues. Why can't they increase the salary cap by 20, 30 mil?
That's a good question. It did happen recently. I don't know what it's going to rise to next year. The other one I forgot is all the gambling money, all the deals that they now have with
FanDuel and DraftKings,
MGM Grand, any
Mhm.
other pop-up, plenty of sites
Caesars.
popped up. Exactly. Any of the resorts out in Vegas, other ones.
Betting.net.
Exactly.
Yep. It goes on. It goes
Powered
on
by
and on.
betting.net. Got to get the plug in.
Yeah, you see what I did there. You like it.
I like it.
That's almost professional, baby.
But I don't know how much the cap is going up, but either way.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they make so much money, dude. That's why I brought it up, because I feel like this is
paid. It's just not the running backs or maybe the safeties, the kickers, the punters.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like this is going to reach a head. It's going to get to the point where players are going to keep getting paid. That's not going to stop, because as long as there is even just one team willing to pay a player, like the Browns were with Watson, they were willing to give him a fully guaranteed deal. As long as there are teams that are willing to do shit like that, the players are obviously going to keep taking it, and that's a win for the players. But my thing is, I feel like this current system is you just can't keep it going long term the way it is, because if the player salaries are going to keep rising in such a way, how are you properly going to build a team if you got to pay your quarterback 50-60 mil a year and the salary cap is 250 mil? The man is taking up a very good portion of that. And hold on. And you got a 53-man roster, 55-man roster, whatever it is. Sure, maybe 75% of the roster is making less than $5 million a year. But the few that are making above that, like, you're going to have your quarterback making 40 mil a year. You're going to have your top edge rusher, wide receiver, and corner getting 20 mil a year each. If you're, let's just say for the example, you're at 250 mil for your team salary cap, which it's not that, I don't even think it's that high, but regardless, let's say you're at 250 mil and that's your salary cap, and your quarterback's getting 50, your other guys are getting 20, 20, 20. I mean, you're already eating up a huge chunk of that. That's why the running backs aren't getting the pay that they deserve. That's why safeties aren't going to pay what they deserve. That's why guards aren't getting paid what they deserve. Like, there's a lot of positions that aren't getting paid what they should be,
because they're just not as important. Now, I'm arguing partly that they should get a little more than what they're getting under the franchise tag, for instance, only 10 mil for the running backs, just a little over that.
Something like that, yeah.
They clearly want more, and someone like Barkley, you do have to measure against the other contracts, and he probably should be getting 13 to 16 million.
Yeah, probably.
I don't blame the Giants for not valuing the position like that. I'm glad that they're playing a little bit of hardball. He's going to play under the tag, but it's not going to change much, just because those positions we know don't have as big of an impact. Yes, they can be great players. There are some guys that get big money, but not a lot of them. And it's just the value of the position. You're not a pass rusher, you're not a quarterback, not a receiver, not a corner, even certain linebackers, depending on how much you play. Some have gotten paid in this offseason, which we will be getting to shortly.
Yep.
Sure, when we talk about what we like and dislike over the offseason. But I don't see why it would change at all. And you also figure back when the draft, you could just bid on a player. These are the draft capital these teams put into the quarterbacks. They're willing to pay them this money. They aren't worth that much money, because now it's very rare. We're not getting the Trent Dilfers or Brad Johnsons winning Super Bowls anymore. It's stud quarterbacks, generally drafted high in the first round, especially first round. There's a few cases here and there, like the Russell Wilsons that win a Super Bowl when they were drafted in the third round, or Jalen Hurts, granted, didn't win it, but he was a second-round pick. We do see other examples, so I don't think it's foolproof to draft one first round, but it's no different from years ago when these guys were not slotted to a salary. They were still eating up a ton of cap, even as a rookie. Imagine if the draft was up for sale.
Oh, my God.
On it, maybe you have like a certain limit, but imagine if or even if there was no limit, how much teams would bet on those? They'd spend 30 mil at least just for the chance, especially say Caleb Williams this year, maybe even more. The quarterback position is always going to get paid. There will be some trickle down as these rights deals go up and the values of the franchise continue to grow. I don't think there will be any kind of windfall. I don't think you'll see a huge change in cap because the owners still have the players over a barrel. I still think they have the advantage in the negotiations, and I think the labor deal doesn't expire for a while now. I think that's pretty locked in for at least 5 to 10 years.
So you don't think by the time this collective bargaining agreement expires, whenever it is, you don't think it's going to get crazy? Let's say it's just in 5 years. Let's say, right? When you see quarterbacks making $70 million, $80 million, hell, why not $100 million a year in 5 years? Why not? When you see that, my thing is, are we going to see the salary cap increase in such a way where it's able to not only afford the right to pay these players what they deserve, but also allow you to functionally build a team? Because there's only so much money to go around.
Teams will manage is also my point of referencing even years ago. You're already paying a rookie who's done squat a ton of money. Like I think Matthew Stafford and Sam Bradford are the last two.
That was the one. Yeah, I was just going to say Stafford.
And it's a perfect example of one worked out great. Stafford was amazing for the Lions, the best quarterback ever. But then you had Sam Bradford. Granted, he had a lot of injuries, but wasn't reliable for the Rams, didn't live up to that first pick status.
And hold on. And what did the NFL do? The NFL implemented a cap for every single selection. So your rookie, it doesn't matter if he's number one or Mr. Irrelevant. He's getting X amount, period. Now, they can draw it up however they want with the salary, with the bonuses and whatever, and the escalators in the contract. But on a year-to-year basis, he's making X. Period.
And you
don't think that's an option for the league moving forward overall?
Because and I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly a perfect example that you brought. And I'd say to that, with they were rookies, and that's why it was right to put a cap. But how are you going to do that on veterans? Are you going to say there's a floor? Because that's what you need to do. You're saying these guys need to get paid more, or rather, you're saying we need to put a cap on how much quarterbacks make, or
exactly. A cap on what the maximum is per position. I don't know how they would formulate it. Maybe they could turn the franchise tag into the limit, where you could say, okay, as a free agent or whatever, the most you can make is the average of the 5 highest salaries at your position.
The players still wouldn't go for that, and the players' union, because the owner's still paying those guys huge gobs of money. It does have a trickle-down effect onto the other players and positions. We're seeing a spell where running backs aren't getting paid. We acknowledge that. It is unfortunate, but we also understand why it's happening, because they are replacement level, unfortunately. It's sad to say, but they get churned up and spit out.
Now,
Matt Miller got in a lot of hot water yesterday, and that was the tweet that a lot of NFL players were responding to.
Mm-hmm.
Was where he said, draft an RB, let him
play if he's good. Let him play for a few years. Yeah.
Then franchise tag him for only 1 year.
Yep.
And then draft another running back.
Yep.
Say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And I get why running backs take exceptions to that. It makes it seem like they're useless or discardable, whatever you might say. But I think Matt Miller knows there's guys that are really valuable, of course. But for the most part, they're a dime a dozen. And every team needs 2 running backs, mainly because of injuries, but also just a spell a guy. It's a demanding position. And you can get that production out of any guy. And when you see the teams that are winning, remember, this is a copycat league. It's almost the same in every other league anyway. Teams are going to copy the teams that are successful. You take a look at the Chiefs. You alluded to it earlier. 2 no-names, basically. Jerick McKinnon getting a ton of burn. And Isaiah Pacheco, who was an afterthought, a 5th-round pick at Rutgers in the draft as a rookie. Mm-hmm. And they win with Patrick Mahomes, who is getting $50 million a year. Jalen Hurts got paid this offseason, and their running game, Miles Sanders, and this is a great example for what we're talking about with the running back market. He actually had a good season. He put together a good year. Finally, he was mostly healthy, and he was a big part of their offense. But they also used Boston Scott a lot. They also used what's his face a lot. I'm blanking on his name. The other backup for the Eagles.
Oh, Gainwell.
Was it Gainwell? Okay,
Kenneth Gainwell.
They used them a lot, and they were effective. They were good. And what did they do? They let Miles Sanders walk in free agencies to the Carolina Panthers. They didn't prioritize him much at all.
But they traded for DeAndre Swift and they added Rashad Penny in the offseason. So they already had two guys that they liked, but they realized that they're just afterthoughts, as you said.
They were going to
brought in two other guys who are better and can produce more. So clearly, it's not an afterthought because they thought enough to spend draft capital on Swift, for example.
And if teams want to spend $12 million on running backs, they're going to do it on running backs, multiple. They're going to get 2 or 3 guys. The team would rather do that, and that's kind of what the Eagles did in that case, bringing in Penny and trading for DeAndre Swift. They can replace that production. That's the whole entire point. A good running back doesn't put you over the top anymore. It's just the reality of it being a passing league. All the rule changes have resulted in the product we're getting and why they're devalued. You can just plug and play guys. Look at wasn't the touchdown leader rushing last year, Jamal Williams for the Lions?
Yeah.
It's a perfect example. And
touchdowns rise, yeah.
He got lowballed by the Lions and went to the Saints on a 1-year deal.
Yep. Now, I do want to get to some comments. So we'll start at the top from Velvet Thunder. Thank you, buddy, for tuning in. Sorry I'm late for class. Class is always in session, buddy. And then he says, I'm with Bobby as long as the money is available. This isn't going to slow down anytime soon. And then he says, even Amazon and YouTube are getting in on the NFL money. And that they are, and they're not stupid.
And 2 huge billion-dollar corporations, big money makers, 2 very well-known companies. That's a great point. There were 2 other entities in bed with the NFL.
Don't forget about what was the one that picked up NFL games this year? I paid a shit ton of money. Was it YouTube?
I know Peacock paid for one exclusive playoff game.
There you go.
Oh, what was it? It was like $500 million for the one game.
Ooh,
crazy!
One
game to stream in the playoffs.
Crazy, dude. But you know what? Let's keep moving on. And then finally, he says that's a good idea. Perhaps they can use a percentage of the cap, i.e., quarterbacks. I don't know what that at the position gets 20%, wide receivers 12%, so on and so forth. So Velvet Thunder's on. You know, he and I we get it. We're on the same level on that front. But let's move on from the running backs. I got 3 more topics: quarterbacks, hot seat, best and worst. And we've got a little less than we got. Hold on, wait for it. Hold on. We've got 17 minutes to go. Are you ready for this, Bob? It's going to get crazy. It's going to be fast.
Let's do it.
All right. Young quarterbacks. Which one of these young quarterbacks is going to take a step forward in this upcoming season? It happens every year. We had Jalen Hurts just do it and lead his team to a Super Bowl. Trevor Lawrence. I lost it. Oh, my God, I lost it. Help me. Mac Jones. There we go. Sorry, I had it. Do I want to say Brock Purdy? Is he even healthy? I don't know. Who cares? Tua, Justin Fields, Dan Jones. Who's taking a step forward this season and catapulting themselves into the top 5, top 10 conversation?
I don't see anyone getting into the top 5 conversation of the players you mentioned. Well, you did include Trevor Lawrence, though, so that is tempting.
That's what I'm saying. I know what I said.
Another season with Doug Peterson, that would definitely be the pick. He would be the number 1 choice of the young quarterbacks who haven't necessarily exploded yet. We know he had a great year last year, took a big step forward in his second season, but still hasn't made that full leap, especially into stardom, like Josh Allen has, Joe Burrow. Mahomes has been there. Herbert's there already at this point, even though he's kind of a quiet superstar. But I would have to say him. Trevor Lawrence has all the intangibles. He was a great quarterback at Clemson. Loved him coming out in that draft. We knew he was going to be the pick for a while. And he's finally starting to put it all together. He has the right coach there. He doesn't have Urban Meyer anymore, which feels like a long time ago, but it was only 2 seasons ago that he was the head coach and lasted for about half the season.
But
Trevor Lawrence is in a great position to succeed. Evan Ingram brought back on that deal. A little ugly, but giving him weapons, keeping someone there.
okay.
That's the end in the backfield. I expect Trevor Lawrence to make a huge leap this year. He's got great receivers. Calvin Ridley coming back off that suspension. I expect him to make a big leap.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see what Ridley can bring to the table. I mean, Ridley is one of those wild cards, man. The man can be a top 10 wide receiver if he's healthy. He's got that potential. But being out of the league for a couple of years, for one reason or another, it's going to be hard for him to get it back. We'll see just how good he can be this season.
Zay Jones got a couple of more options out there.
No, they got pieces. They got pieces. I like Jacksonville. I'm going to go with Justin Fields, however, because the Justin Fields stands out, even though I am a Lions fan, reluctantly so. The Justin Fields thing seems like just one of those obvious players that's going to take that next step, because we already know his athletic abilities are elite. They're through the roof. He's arguably, outside of Lamar Jackson, the best running quarterback in the NFL right now, and one of the better running quarterbacks maybe the league has seen in its history. But you don't win games at quarterback by running the ball. And let's be honest, Chicago didn't really do this kid any damn favors. But this offseason, they upgraded everything. They got another running back in Dante Foreman and Rashawn Johnson. They got a wide receiver 1 in DJ Moore. They upgraded the offensive line. It helps that they drafted Darnell Wright in the first round, 10th overall, to plug in at right tackle. I mean, just those 3 pieces alone. They added Chase Claypool at the trading deadline during the season. I mean, they bulked up their defense. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. I mean, the team is still not quite, but they're trying. Another year in this system, and people have been comparing Fields to Jalen Hurts, because the question about Hurts coming into last season was, can he take that next step as a passer? We know what he can do as a runner. We know he's got the arm talent, but can he do it? And yeah, he did. And now he's in the conversation as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, depending on who you talk to. Don't ask Mike Goodpasser, because I'm sure Jalen Hurts ain't going to be in his top 10. But I'm excited to see his QB rankings, and he and I will discuss the top 10 QBs going into the season, as we did last season. I kept the receipts, and it's going to get crazy. You will want to tune in for that one. But that aside, I'm going to go Jalen Hurts. I'm going to go Justin Fields as my quarterback pick to take that next big step. Quarterbacks, head coaches on the hot seat. I had read something that apparently Bill Belichick might be on the hot seat, since his relationship with the owner, Robert Kraft, has soured, let's just say. I'm not buying it. But, Bob, with that in mind, who's on the hot seat, head coach on the hot seat going into week 1?
Well, Mike McCarthy's always on hot seat.
God, I hate Mike McCarthy.
Coach. Always going to be on the hot seat.
Sucks.
They need to make the playoffs again.
They
had a very hilarious ending to their season last year.
It's so bad.
Embarrassing. Zeke getting trucked on that weird that they tried to pull off at the end. Just hideous.
Awful.
He needs to get to the playoffs. He's on the hot seat. They had flirted with Sean Payton. Now that's done with, because he's now with the Broncos.
Yep.
He's firmly on the hot seat. If they don't get to the playoffs and maybe even win a playoff game, he's out. And I also want to add one more. I do think Robert Saleh is a bit on the hot seat. Maybe I wouldn't rank him number 2. I'd have to go through more of the head coaches around the league. But Saleh needs to get to the playoffs. This team has a lot of young talent. They still won, 6 or 7 games last year with Zach Wilson as a starting quarterback. You had Garrett Wilson win Offensive Rookie of the Year, still with him at quarterback. Now you add Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks of our generation, a top 10 quarterback all time, 4-time MVP.
Yep.
They have a good defense also. They need to be better this year. They tailed off at the end of last year. They need to be more consistent, but they brought a lot of guys back. They drafted Will McDonald in the first round, 15th overall. I think the Jets have a lot of expectations We were hearing it in New York. And even
Yeah.
if you're on the national audience, look, they're over under for wins in Vegas, 9.5. They're expected to do big things. They can
Hmm.
contend in this division. Aaron Rodgers, new system, but same head coach, so it probably won't be all that much different. And a new team, new surroundings. But Robert Saleh has to get it done. They need to get in the playoffs at least. That's a bad look in season 3.
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers now is your quarterback, and you can't make the playoffs when there's 7 teams that make it.
So you're going to Mike McCarthy. I'm going to go with Brandon Staley. Now, I loved the Staley hire when the Chargers did it. I wanted Staley in Detroit instead of Dan Campbell. I was obviously confused considering Campbell has elevated this roster. I'm not going to put it all on Campbell. They've got an elite coaching staff, and that's helped. But Staley, I mean, when you look at the Chargers roster, not just their offense, but you look at their roster, they have one of the best rosters since he's been their head coach.
When you
And
have
now,
that formula where you rank certain position groups, and I imagine the Chargers are always high. The Chargers always look like a paper. They always wind up being a paper tiger. Basically, they look great. They have a lot of high end players at each position, but just can never put it all together. Partially because of injuries, but also just they're the Chargers.
well, I know the Chargers sting you, and you have a thing against them and the Falcons when it
It's not
comes
against
to
them. It's just they have that DNA.
They
Jets are
do.
the same way. They're that loser. Unfortunately, it's sad to say. The Vikings, they just have a history of disappointing, bad losses. That's what has happened. That's reality as far as their franchise.
You're not wrong, but I'm going to go with the Chargers because even though their offensive line isn't quite 3/4 of it is more than good enough. And they got Justin Herbert, Eckler, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. They drafted Quentin Johnson, Silky Johnston. That's my boy. You know, their defense, they've got Mack, they've got Bosa, Kenneth Murray. They brought in Eric Kendricks as a free agent in the offseason. They have J.C. Jackson and Asante Samuel at corner. They have maybe the best safety in football in Derwin James. They've got a ton of talent, and they just disappoint every year. And when it comes time to crunch time, where the coach steps in with a good play call or some motivating speech to get his team rallied, this man falls flat. And he makes terrible decisions late in games. I know when Mike and I have talked throughout this past season, maybe every week at one point where we were talking about the Chargers, he brought up the fact that Staley made at least one bad call, whether it be a play call, a timeout, a lack of a timeout, just stupid shit that you're a professional coach, you shouldn't be doing. So I'm going to go with Staley. The talent's there. The Chargers are in a tough division, but they've got tons of talent. One of the best young quarterbacks in the league, and everything's there. And now finally, Bob, for our last topic of the day, best and worst off seasons. Give me one team, Bob, that sticks out to you as having maybe the best off season of anybody.
So there are a bunch of different options I could go with here.
I want one.
I'm only going to give you one. Don't
Give me
worry.
one.
I'll go with one that maybe isn't at the very, very top of my list, but it's right there. I'm going to say the Broncos.
You son of a bitch.
I love what the Broncos did for a
I
number of
hate you.
reasons. The number one is clearly the head coach.
Yeah.
Getting Sean Payton, that has to be factored in, not just the player acquisitions, the drafts, the signings, trades, what have you. Getting a coach like Sean Payton, who had an outstanding career with the New Orleans Saints, that's going to really help Russell Wilson bounce back. I still have my doubts that Russell Wilson's ever going to be as good as he was with the Seahawks, but there's no doubt there's only room to improve. He was absolute dog shit last year. Let's call it what it is. Russell Wilson sucked last year.
He did.
I don't see him staying that bad. Will he get back to Seahawks prominence? Maybe not. But with Sean Payton, hey, maybe he can. There's that possibility, at least, now that they actually have a real head coach rather than Nathaniel Hackett as their head coach.
I just want you to know, I want to say this out loud, that I hate you because I've been on the Broncos for at least the last 2 years. And all I've said for the last few years is they need a quarterback. A couple of years ago, Drew Lock shit the bed. Last year, they got Russell Wilson. I thought, oh, man, they got a stud quarterback. Now it's time. They're so talented. And it didn't happen. And now here we are this offseason. And I wanted to say the Broncos, but you cockblocked me.
And the funny thing is, neither of us, I think, were high on the Broncos last year. We thought they'd be better for sure than they wound up being. But I don't believe either of us really picked them for the playoffs. I believe we had them on the fringe. But they could make it this year. They're not as good as the Chargers or the Chiefs. They're still going to be fighting for one of those last wild card spots. But they have to be better. Russell Wilson's going to be better. And you look at what they did in the offseason as well. Signing Zach Allen to bolster the D-line. The big signing was Mike McGlinchey at offensive tackle. A lot of teams were interested in him. He's probably the best one out there, and he goes to the Broncos. Orlando Brown also was out there. He did go to the Bengals. I do have to add him in there when we're talking about best tackles that were available. But they get McGlinchey. Samaje Perine, I think, was a revelation at running back. For the Bengals, they're going to miss him. Now, he's not some unbelievable stud. But with Javonte Williams coming back off a torn ACL last year, that's going to be tough. You add another good player to the mix. They made some nice under-the-radar moves, also a splashy move with McGlinchey, and above all, the head coach. This will be a better team. I really like their offseason overall.
All right. For me, I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, they had a weird offseason. But the reason I like them is because they've got a quarterback going into his second year. They believe in him. Listen, if Mike Tomlin believes in Kenny Pickett, I believe in Kenny Pickett. And they added some quality pieces. Allen Robinson at wide receiver they traded for almost nothing. As a wide receiver 3, you could do a lot worse than Allen Robinson. They drafted Broderick Jones in the first round. They traded up ahead of the Jets to cockblock them. I don't care what the Jets say. I don't care what they say. They were going to take Broderick, and everybody knows it. The fact that they got jumped, and they were, we were always going to take the pass rusher.
That's usually the Giants.
Sure you were, bro.
Yeah, that's usually the Giants getting jumped for someone they want, whether it was Leonard Floyd and Jack Conklin the one year.
Yep.
It's just disgusting. Or for Devontae Smith was the more recent example.
Smith, yep.
2021.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So they got hashtag Giants problems. But no, they got jumped. Broderick Jones will be their starting left tackle from day one. They signed Isaac Seumalo from Philadelphia, the guard. He's going to plug in and be an immediate starter. That moves Dan Moore and Kevin Dotson, their 2 starters at guard and tackle last year, to backup roles. That sort of experience is invaluable, especially at the swing tackle spot where Dan Moore is going to be filling in because Chuck Okorafor, I suck with names. He's plugged in at right tackle. So they added 2 starters. They bolstered their depth on the offensive line. They added another wide receiver, quality. And then on the flip side, Keanu Benton, I love him at nose tackle. I love the fact that they got Joey Porter Jr. in the second round, plug him in at corner. They rebuilt their secondary, 3 brand new starters at corner. They got 2 new starters at inside linebacker in Cole Holcomb and Eldon Roberts. Holcomb is one of those players that the analytics loved. So I like all these additions. I think even though their division's tough, Pittsburgh is a team that can make some noise. Let's move on to the worst offseason. And Bob, if you don't mind, I'm gonna take this one first. My worst offseason. It was between a couple of teams, but my team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you go from the GOAT to Baker Mayfield, you can expect some disappointment. And he wasn't the only key piece of this offense or of this team that left in the offseason. They lost playoff Leonard Fournette, the running back. I mean, just disappointing. I mean, I guess you consider it wins that they brought back Levante David, Jamal Dean on free agent deals. I guess that's a win. But dude, when you look at that roster, it's so bad. Baker, Rashad White. I mean, I like Rashad White, but come on. And then the receivers are good, but other than that, tight ends suck. Their offensive line sucks. Their offensive line is so bad. Their defense is just wildly unimpressive. It's weird. Like individually, they have good parts. Like I like Winfield Jr., I like Jamal Dean, I like Carton Davis. Defensive line, I like Vita Vea, but it's just overall ugly. The best. I mean, Shaquille Barrett, he's good, but what's he really giving you at this point? You know what I'm saying? The man's getting old. Not a fan. I'm gonna say Tampa Bay.
I like that pick a lot. The only thing that's good about what the Bucks and Cardinals have done in this offseason is not a whole lot, and tank for Caleb Williams, even if they don't get Caleb Williams out of USC, who was the Heisman Trophy winner last year. Maybe they get Drake May out of North Carolina at number 2 if he continues to progress and play well. He's currently projected to be that number 2 guy right behind Caleb Williams at quarterback. That's one good thing for those two teams. They really didn't sign many guys. They kept a few of their own. Really didn't make any big splashes.
So is Arizona your pick?
And no, I'm getting there. I'm actually giving. That's the thing. I agree that the Bucks had a terrible offseason for what the goal should be is to get better every offseason. But I'm just saying for the Bucks and the Cardinals, I like that they didn't do a whole lot. Even the Cardinals traded out of their first round pick to get another one next year with the Texans because they know they're going to suck, both teams, and be drafted really high in 2024. That's what they did.
That's what they did.
Suck, but I actually like that they sucked this offseason because it might reap the rewards in next year's draft. Besides that, my most hated offseason of this 2023 offseason. It's a little redundant there.
Great. Good job.
We're long in the show. We're like 55 minutes in. Is the Atlanta Falcons. I really hate what they've done. They weren't in on Lamar Jackson. Now, I was someone that wasn't thinking, Lamar should get paid a fully guaranteed contract. That's crazy. The Watson contract was a fluke. He wasn't going to get more guaranteed. That was just a crazy team and a crazy owner. He still got paid, got his money. I'm glad he's still with Baltimore. But Atlanta should have been active trying to go after him. They have Desmond Ridder as their quarterback. They signed Taylor Heineke to be their backup. And I actually do like Heineke as a backup, but strictly that. To come in, play a few games, that's it. Fill in. They did not address the quarterback position, and I don't know if they're going to suck enough next year, worse than two other teams in the NFC that I was just talking about, the Bucks and the Cardinals. They drafted a running back at 8 overall. Bijan Robinson at 13 mil or so is going to be the highest paid running back this season. I think he'll produce because he is a talented player coming out of Texas. Don't get me wrong there. But I wouldn't have taken him at 8. There's a lot of other options that they could have gone with at that position. They did get a few other good players like Zach Harrison in the 3rd round and the guard out of Syracuse in the 2nd round. So I do like those moves. But just an uninspiring offseason, especially in free agency, signing 2 D tackles, David Onyemata, Calais Campbell, still a good player, but how much does he really have left? I just felt like they left a lot to be desired. People are talking about the Falcons as a dark horse in the AFC South. I think they still suck. They're not any good. They got Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke at quarterback. I don't care about Bijan Robinson. They don't have a great O-line either. It's solid. It's a little better than it used to be. They lost Calvin Ridley because he was suspended, and then they traded him. They have Drake London. I like him. But Kyle Pitts, is he going to show us anything? It's going to be hard when we have Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. And the cherry on top is that Arthur Smith is their head coach, who runs the most bland offenses in the entire NFL. This team,
missionary offense.
I don't know why people are talking about them as some kind of dark horse in the South. This should be the Saints division. I don't even love them either, but these other teams in the South are hot garbage, especially the Falcons, and even more so the Bucks. The Panthers will be a little better, but this division's hot doo-doo, and we just mentioned 2 of them. It's going to suck. These teams blow, and their off seasons reflect it.
You're not wrong, Bob. And you know what? I was going to try to clown you by looking up Bijan Robinson's information. Now, you're correct at the cash number of 13 mil plus, almost 14 mil. It's 13.7. But the cap hit, I don't know if that's important, but the cap hit is a lot lower than that.
That's not what I'm going by. I'm going by what's been reported, so it's just purely the salary, not the cap hit.
Fair enough. Do you have any final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
I do want to throw out a thought, is that I also really don't like the Bears offseason. Just want to fit that in there. To me, they should have gotten Mike McGlinchey. And I actually like the DJ Moore. That's why I didn't go with them. Like, there's other ones that are worse. Certainly, like the one, all the ones we mentioned, even in passing, like me saying the Cardinals. Even though, yes, it might benefit them next year. They're bad, but with the Bears, two linebackers they spent all that money on, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. I don't think that's the right place to spend it nowadays. They lost David Montgomery in free agency. No big deal. I like Khalil Herbert maybe stepping in. So DJ Moore, I do like that. That's what prevented me from even mentioning them until now. But did they get really that much better? I think these NFC teams, there's going to be some terrible teams at the bottom.
Well, that's mostly why I think a guy like Justin Fields is going to take that step forward. I mean,
especially in fantasy, that's where people are going to love him because he will be better with an actual weapon in DJ Moore. He'll just be better because it's his third season. And I think finally we'll get rid of the Ohio State stigma for quarterbacks.
Hopefully. I mean, even though that college has sucked at producing quarterbacks in the last few years, but I digress. Okay, that's that. I want to remind everyone to give us a follow on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. It's at DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. And if you give us a follow, we'll follow you back. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or topics you want us to discuss, reach out to us in the DMs. We will respond. Well, with that in mind, for Bobby Hunt, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in for another edition of the DB Show here on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, where legends speak. I'm Dan Kornhauser for Bobby Hunt. Have a good night.